Hey y'all, I'm really looking forward to spending this semester with y'all in AP 213. My name is David Filson. I'm President's Professor of Apologetics and Systematic Theology at Westminster Theological Seminary. AP 213 is the second required course following, of course, AP 101. Two required courses in apologetics for a Westminster Theological Seminary Master's of Divinity is a rather unique feature among seminaries and speaks to our sense of purpose and identity as a theological institution. If you're interested, you can read my dissertation. I'm going to post that in the files section of Canvas. It'll give you a sense of just how crucial apologetics was in the formation of Westminster Theological Seminary and has remained so to this day. What we're attempting to do this semester in AP 213 is to lay out the biblical building blocks and the theological tethering for the apologetic task, as well as the personal, spiritual, inner heart commitments of the apologist, which all believers are called to be apologists. In other words, apologetics is not simply a discipline of study in theological catalog. It is rather an indelible aspect of the Christian life, as we will see in the first 2 or 3 lectures. We're going to consider the Textus Classicus of Christian apologetics. 1 Peter 3:15-16, but in your heart set apart Christ the Lord as holy. Always be ready to give an apologion, an apologetic, when someone asks you for the logon, the logos, the reason for the elpides, the hope that is within you, but this do with protetus and phobu, with gentleness and respect. In other words, apologetics is first a matter of the heart for both the believer and the unbeliever, and the lordship of Christ in relation to our hearts. And this has definite implications for how we understand epistemological issues, such as revelation or analogous thinking, the myth of neutrality, both the supposed neutrality of man's natural reason, as well as the neutrality of the facts of the universe around us. We're going to come to learn that the task of apologetics is to be what I call hope defenders. We do this, according to 1 Peter 3:15-16, as the welcoming committee, with gentleness, with respect, wooing people to Christ by the power of the Spirit. But then there's also the other Textus Classicus of Christian apologetics, and that is 2 Corinthians 10:3-6. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not wage war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but are mighty in God for pulling down strongholds and demolishing pretensions set against the knowledge of God. Yes, we are hope defenders in the sense of being the welcoming committee, but we're also the wrecking crew. We wreck not people, but pretensions that keep people in bondage. The old saying goes, ideas have consequences and bad ideas have victims. Now, AP 213 is the more historically, philosophically, and theologically, exegetically intense of the 2 AP courses. The first one being more introductory and kind of familiarizing you with certain concepts and ways of thinking about apologetics. But here there are going to be new categories and concepts along the way. We're going to jump into the deep end of the pool pretty quickly. Don't worry, I'll pass out floaties. We're going to ground everything in the authority of revelation, both incarnated revelation, Christ, for a Christ-centered worldview, and inscripturated revelation, the Word of God, God's special revelation inscripturated, which is inerrant, infallible, necessary, perspicuous, and sufficient. But we're also going to consider natural revelation, which is likewise authoritative, inerrant, infallible, necessary, perspicuous, and sufficient for what it's intended to reveal. We're going to do an exegetical study of John 1 and Romans 1 and think about the implications of these texts for the ways in which man receives and responds to God's revelation. We're going to see that while we can distinguish natural and special revelation, we can never divorce them, and that the bifurcation which seems to exist between them is because of the fallout of the fall and the entrance of sin into the world. The goal of apologetics is the communication of a Christian theistic worldview, the Christian faith. We're not interested in establishing a probability argument, even a high probability argument, for some sort of generic theism. We are defending, declaring, demonstrating, and delighting in nothing less than the Christian faith. And that's why we must start with Christian principia. You're going to hear that language a lot. Our principia, Latin word for first or principal things, principal matters. You know, the principal of a high school is the first officer in that high school. So what are the first principles for apologetics? Well, There is our principium essendi, our starting point for being, the triune God of the Bible, and our principium cognoscendi externum, or our starting point for cognition or knowing that's external to us, and that's the Bible of the triune God. In other words, the triune God of the Bible and the Bible of the triune God are our baseline presuppositions, apart from which we cannot account for the preconditions of intelligibility and reality as we experience it. Apart from our principia, we cannot account for inductive reasoning upon which science depends, deductive reasoning upon which math depends, the regularity or normativity of nature upon which science depends, objectivity and predication upon which language and communication depends, universals, morality, personhood. The list goes on and on. We're going to make much of our principia, these preconditions of intelligibility, because God makes the connection between subject and object when it comes to knowledge. And so our knowledge must be revelational, analogous to God's perfect knowledge, in order for us to be able to account for knowing at all. This is why Cornelius Van Til has taught us, by the way. Van Til says hi. That's why Cornelius Van Til, I'm here all day, folks. There are more jokes like that along the way, so brace yourselves. But it's Cornelius Van Til who's taught us that our Anknüpfungspunkt is the Imago Dei, Anknüpfungspunkt, the German word for point of contact. It's an indelible, unavoidable point of contact, connecting point between the believer and the unbeliever, and it's the Imago Dei. And we're going to show how that is consistent with Calvin's idea of the sensus divinitatis, the sense of divinity that every human being comes standard feature with, the semen religionis, the seat of religion, or the cognitio incita Dei. So these are the positive principles of AP 213. The negative, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, but the sort of critical approach we're going to take, for instance, with, say, the 5 Thomistic proofs, which are, as Van Til said, valid in a proper epistemological, methodological context. But we don't want to rely on those in the context of some commitment to a supposed neutrality of human reasoning. In other words, we can talk about evidences, contingency, causality, necessity, not in a supposed neutral context, but rather in the what I call epistemological atmosphere of our principia, of the triune God of the Bible and the Bible of the triune God. We're going to ground everything in a Christian approach to what I call the 5 pieces of the worldview puzzle: theology, anthropology, epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics, and consider the implications for our approach to apologetics in our sort of postmodern cultural moment. We're going to consider the impact of philosophers from David Hume, Immanuel Kant, Friedrich Nietzsche, Jean-Francois Lyotard, Michel Foucault, to name just a few. We'll consider the early 2000s and the rise of neo-atheism, the neo-atheist 4 horsemen of the neo-atheist apocalypse: Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens, who sadly passed away on December 15th, 2011, as well as consider some of the more recent atheistic influencers on Instagram and YouTube. In fact, we'll get at some point to what is considered the defeater argument for Christian theism, namely the problem of evil, as being a logical sort of self-destruct issue for Christian faith and practice. When we get together for our 3 regularly scheduled all-class Zoom meetings, as well as the weekly Zoom sessions that I'm going to offer for any of you to just drop in on and spend time with me, talk about the course, raise questions, whatever you want to talk about, we'll play what I call meme madness, where we will look at certain memes from atheistic Instagram accounts or short YouTube videos, and we'll dissect those things together from the standpoint of what we are learning in covenantal apologetics. Look, I'm looking forward to our 3 all-class Zoom meetings this semester. They're spaced out in the schedule that you have there. I'm looking forward to getting to know y'all, and totally open to y'all texting or calling. 615, that's the Nashville area code where I live, 828, like Romans 8:28. And then the final 4 numbers are the year of the Protestant Reformation. I'll leave you to figure that out yourself. But if you get a hold of me, or you're not able to get a hold of me, you have to leave a message. I will endeavor to get back with you within 24 hours. You can email me at dfilson@wts.edu, David, and then F is in fun, because we're going to have a whole lot of fun. DFILSON, David Filson, dfilson@wts.edu. You can send up smoke signals or just come visit me here in Nashville. We'll go play guitar and get some hot chicken. I'm looking forward to this semester with y'all. It's going to be a good time of learning to believe the gospel a little more deeply and love Jesus a little more fervently and get to know each other and have some fellowship. So let's have some fun this semester studying, reading, going to the deep end of the pool in the principles of Christian apologetics here at Westminster Theological Seminary. We'll see you soon. Much love.